Everyone, and welcome to this season's NATS Chat. I'm Kari Reagan, the moderator and host of our NATS Chats. And you see our lovely panel and tech help across the top of your screen. I just want to welcome you to this season. We have several wonderful chats prepared for you, including tonight with Amy Burton, Brian Damaris, and Matt Edwards. I also just want to thank Alan Henderson, our Executive Director of NATS, for his continued support of the NATS Chat and for rushing home from Papa to be with us tonight. And also David Sabella Mills, who is on, you won't see them, they'll take their cameras off, but I want to publicly thank them for their continued support. This season, some of our chats will be, well, all of our chats. One will be Sherry Sanders, Rock the Audition, a panel discussion with Sherry Greenwald and Ann Baltz about the current state of the Young Artists programs. Ken Bozeman educating teachers about solving vocal challenges through understanding acoustics. A panel discussion with a group of SVSs, some of my colleagues that I work with, Peggy Baruti, Karen Wicklund, and Sharon Radionoff. A chat with the famous Dolores Zajic, and a discussion with Jean Abitbol, Dr. Jean Abitbol from France. He'll be chatting with us from France about hormones and the impact on the voice. And then we'll finish the year with Dr. Scott McCoy. And David, before we lose David, I'm going to have him just give you a brief tutorial about how you can participate in tonight's chat.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. So if you are new to this format, you see, hopefully, on the right side of your screen, a control panel where you will see your name and you will see a microphone. Probably has a little slash through it. You'll see different columns. There's a column there that looks like a raised hand. And that raised hand is to literally raise your hand virtually. If you click on that raised hand icon, it will alert one of us that you have a question that you would like to audibly say, and we will then unmute your microphone and allow you to speak to the panelists directly. If you would not like to speak, or if you don't have a microphone, you may also use the chat box. The chat box is the last box down the row. If you open your chat box and type there, we'll see that, and better yet, we should probably have them use the question box. Yes, sorry. Instead of chats, chats are so you can talk to each other. Questions are questions for us. So if you would like to ask a question and you don't have a microphone, type it into the question box, and we will moderate the question for you, and the panelist will answer live. You may chat amongst yourselves with each other by the chat box. You can send a message to us or to any other attendee as well. If there are any questions, just raise your hand about the technology or for the panelists, and one of us will get back to you either privately or publicly as soon as possible. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Great. Well, let's begin tonight's chat with, again, our panel discussion about audition recordings for both the Young Artist programs and for our high school seniors who are getting ready for collegiate auditions. And I'm so privileged and thrilled to have our guests here tonight. Brian, would you mind just leading us off with a brief introduction about your experience and where you currently are?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Damaris, and for the past 7 years, I was a director of opera and music theater at Ithaca College in upstate New York. And in May, I moved to Phoenix to head the program at Arizona State University. Also in the summer times, I'm music director of Mill City Summer Opera in Minneapolis, and have worked for the past 6 years on and off, but pretty regularly with the Aspen Music Festival.
Thank you. Amy, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about where you are.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Burton, and I've had a long career as a singer, opera singer, chamber music, recitals. Now I do a little bit more cabaret. But anyway, I've been working here and in Europe, and for the last 13 years, I've been on the faculty of the NATS College of Music at the New School here in New York. I'm also on the voice faculty at the CUNY Grad Center doctoral program and at Songfest at Colburn, which is a summer program in Los Angeles devoted to art, song, and I also teach a little bit at Manhattan School in French vocal literature, and I teach privately. And I listen to quite a few pre-screening recordings, mostly for NATS. That's the bulk of what I do in that department.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us. And Matt, who is so kindly driven, he's on his way, driving from North Carolina back home to Virginia, and has stopped at a Holiday Inn to join us tonight. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's thanks to 3 traffic accidents and the good people at Woodstock, Virginia, Holiday Inn Express, giving them a shout out over at the counter for letting me crash their eatery. I'm at Shenandoah Conservatory when I'm not at the Holiday Inn, and there I'm on the voice faculty, and I teach voice pedagogy and musical theater voice. And we have been doing video pre-screening since they started, I think. We're anticipating 400 to 500 videos coming through this year. I helped write the online audition guide for Accepted, which a lot of schools are using, and many of you who have submitted video will probably be using them. So when Accepted was getting started, I did some consulting with them and helped them write their digital video audition guide. And I just hope we'll all realize tonight it's not that scary.
Well, that's nice. So, Brian, why don't you lead us off just a little bit about, when you do listen, are you spending more time listening to audio or video recordings, and just your overall impressions?
Certainly. The bulk of the video recordings that I've listened to, and it has always been video since I started listening to pre-screening recordings, has been undergraduates auditioning for a music theater program, as well as considering singers professionally. I know this isn't the subject of tonight's conversation, but doing a lot of casting by videos submitted from singers and agents, as well as what's available on YouTube and singer websites for professional roles. And now in my role at ASU will be pre-screening graduate opera and music theater auditions, though that's just another month around the corner. So,
I think many you'll hear. Do you have and are those audio as well, or are video as well for your school?
Video, yes. Yeah.
Any ideas?
At Ithaca College, we would hear, in pre-screening, at least 500 per year. Yeah, we would watch, I should say. And I don't know the numbers yet at ASU in terms of the pre-screening side. I know we hear ultimately on campus just over 100 live auditions.
Oh, goodness. Amy, how about you? Some overall thoughts about what you're noticing?
Well, video is actually rather new at NATS. I'd say it's been about, there used to be maybe 1 or 2 a year, and now I'd say it makes up the bulk of them, but we still get a few that are just audio. Mm-hmm. And I prefer the video because I feel it's more honest. You can actually, as a voice teacher, I can tell a lot by watching as well as listening. And they're not, it's harder to edit a video, so I think you get a truer picture of who's in front of you. There's a new trend that I'm finding a little confusing, which is that some audio studios are offering a video component. And so you're watching a singer in a studio, and what you're seeing is raw video, but what you're hearing is a very polished, mixed sound. It's got the reverb on it, and that I feel it defeats the purpose of the video, which is to get a more realistic picture of the singer. I feel sometimes I might hear them just out of curiosity, but I also might not if I feel that someone is really enhancing their sound in a way that's not giving a true impression. Mm-hmm. But I'm perfectly happy with the videos that people make in their teachers or coaching studios or in churches. A lot of them are made in churches, and I feel that I'm watching somebody give a performance, and that's helpful. That's useful.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, does it bother you when, it's in are the aesthetics important? So sometimes we'll get videos that are just poorly done. It's in a terrible classroom and upright piano, it isn't professional. It doesn't feel like somebody who's giving a performance on any level from aesthetics.
That's true. I have seen plenty in very sad-looking classrooms, and if somebody's talented, I think that shines through. I mean, I'm not going to pass someone on to the next level because they're in a beautiful room as opposed to a drab one. I think what we're looking for is pretty clear. But obviously, if you're in a performance space and you have good quality audio and a nice piano, it's going to make for a better performance. For me, the deal breaker with the audio recordings was whenever somebody would use a clearly electronic instrument. And that to me was a deal breaker. And I know that there may be some people who might even have talent but don't have access to a good piano, but for me personally, that was always the deal breaker, that I want to hear two musicians making music, as it should be. Not that they're not making music on an electronic instrument, but it was a harder sell. Somebody would have to be extremely talented for me to get over that, and my sense is that most of the people that we would want to take would want to have a proper instrument to begin with. But I don't know how other people feel about that.
Well, Matt, I know at some point I definitely want to guide the conversation for you to talk about the technology and specifics about both Brian and Amy and myself. When we met Wednesday, we're very interested in that part, how you can inform us. But first, tell us from your perspective, the videos that you watch, what are you noticing and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Amy that I've noticed too the trend of them starting to do the more professionally produced recordings with video. You don't have to do that. It's money that's not that well spent. It doesn't really give us any better information, so that's the one way I always inform the parents. There's no need to spend an extra $500 to $1,000 for that. I also don't like the fake reverb added into it. I really prefer to even try not to have a whole lot of acoustic reverb for the music theater auditions. It's nice just to hear what the voice is by itself in more of a dry room. And background and stuff doesn't bother me as much. A lot of these high school kids have limited resources, so they are doing it in a classroom. I prefer not to see the garage selfie, and we really have actually seen that, where the kid is holding their cell phone and doing an a cappella selfie audition video in their garage. And we see the bedroom selfies as well, where you can watch them reach around and press the CD recorder or the CD player to kick it on with a recorded piano track. So those things are the things that I'm not so fond of. But at the end of the day, I think it's what Amy has said. We're really looking for talent, and what I'm looking for is a video that lets me see who the person is, that I can get a feel for their personality, and start to feel some connection to them as much as you can through a video.
And is it the same? I mean, with this great panel, is it the same? Do we hold the same standard for music theater and classical? Do we expect anything different from the videos for our classical programs and auditions versus the music theater?
I can speak to that. I see 80% of the issues, or maybe 90% or 99%, I could even say, that I have with audition videos when I do take issue with them would be the same issues I would have in a live audition. When you have a video, the opportunity to make a video, you get to actually recreate your ideal audition scenario, including picking your room, picking your pianist, picking your lighting, choosing what you want to wear, picking what you want to sing. And I think that most of the issues you see on pre-screening videos are some of the similar issues that would come into play in a room, except that you wonder why it wouldn't be better in cases when the student actually has control over some of those things, like the balance with the piano or where to stand, things that are much more difficult for singers to pick right in the moment in an audition room. In terms of opera and music theater, I think it's similar as well. And when someone's submitting for pre-screening in music theater, the instructions are usually pretty clearly spelled out as to what is wanted in terms of repertoire, and in most cases what is expected in terms of accompaniment. I think a lot of the schools ask for a live accompaniment, or at least strongly recommend it. And I think in opera it's similar, although there might be a wider wider range of repertoire that's presented in the pre-screening.
Mhm. Well, I think there's no doubt that we need live performances. I mean, I don't hear any musical theater auditions, so I can't really speak to that. But I think basically in terms of audio and video, we want to hear you clearly, we want to see you clearly, because I've had people call me and make make an appointment to come see me and say, why wasn't I accepted for a live audition? And I'll listen to the pre-screening recordings with them sometimes, and I'll say, well, you sang flat here, so if it wasn't a good recording or not representative, then you shouldn't have submitted it, because that's what you send us is what we see and hear. I know it sounds rather obvious, but I think sometimes students get concerned about deadlines, and they want to put something together, and it may not be the best thing, and it's hard to convince them sometimes that it's better to wait. Maybe miss a deadline, but come out with something that you're very proud of and very happy with. I've had some of them make their recordings in my studio. They'll take the last 15 minutes of a voice lesson and do that, and it's a fine enough setting, and if they are all warmed up and they feel they've worked on it and it's in good shape, why not? I agree that you don't have to spend a lot of money for fancy video. The main thing is that the performance is clear and that it's good.
It's interesting. That's a theme now tonight across the board, that that really you want to see something that the talent stands out to you, that we can overlook where it's being recorded, even the technology. The only thing that would stand out technological if it's overproduced, that we'd much rather see underproduced video, not necessarily high quality, but that you're really looking for that something that stands out in the singing, in the performance of the singer.
Yeah, I'd be curious if Amy and Brian have thoughts on this, but for me, when I will occasionally watch some of the graduate pre-screening videos, which usually are the classical people coming in for the pedagogy program. And it seems to me that we're used to listening to classical singers in a hall, so we're 10, 20, 30 foot away from them, whereas the music theater singers, you're basically hearing them put their mouth next to the mic and sing. So there's a rawer quality on the music theater voice I think our ears are accustomed to, and there is more of that acoustic and room sound that comes into the classical voice that we're accustomed to. So for me, as a video or a mic that's a little bit more up close on the musical theater singer, and like I said, in a dry room doesn't bother me. If I hear a classical recording where it's really dry, that is to me just, it doesn't work as well as when I can hear that mic placed back 10, 20 foot where I get a better balance of the room and the singer, more like I would expect if I was listening to them in a recital.
Mm-hmm. Right. I have there was a singer a few years ago, a beautiful young woman who was rather petite, and she was in a studio with the microphone right there, like she was making a pop recording, which is not actually how they record classical music anyway. Usually it's hanging in the air because I was listening to her sing Un Bel Dì from Madame Butterfly, and I thought, there's just no way that what I'm hearing is coming out of that little tiny person. It was clearly beefed up, but the voice was beautiful, and I agreed to hear her for a private lesson here in New York because I wanted to get a real honest assessment of what her voice was actually like. So I said yes, because the voice, as it turned out, she was much more of a lighter soprano, indeed, in person. But I felt that what she was doing was artful and beautiful enough that I wanted to hear her in person. But that was still before her actual audition for the school.
I found in most of the pre-screening it's close to impossible unless you really trust what you're hearing technologically to get a sense of the projection of the instrument by video. And just as it is on professional audio recordings or DVDs for that matter, and HD broadcasts. So what I tend to be looking for is, first of all, is it worth this student's time and money as well as our time to bring this student here to hear more of this? But some of the technical things that you can assess on the video, pitch is number one. In fact, for me personally, pitch if I'm listening to a live audition and pitch is, the third or fourth rung down the ladder of the things I'm listening for and looking at and taking in, it rises in its priorities when I'm watching it on video just because it's so present, but also articulation, vocal health, tension, physicality, being in the body. These are all the sorts of things that come through quite clearly on videos. In terms of size of instrument or projection, the thing that will sort of discount a singer for me is if the piano is just burying the singer completely. And I do see that on a lot of recordings, that the balance, it might be right if I were standing in the room with them, but just on the recording, the piano was so present, or whatever accompaniment they might be using, that the impression was that either the voice just does not project over the piano, or the recording was just poorly done in terms of balance, that I couldn't really hear the singer, and then it didn't serve the singer very well in that case.
Thank you. We have a question, a virtual hand raised for Robin. Robin, I'm going to open your mic. Unmute Robin, and you are welcome to ask your question now. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay, once you turned on my mic, then I couldn't hear you, so I didn't know. Okay, yes, I can't. Well, hopefully when you answer, I'll be able to hear you. My question is if you have a preference, this is mostly regarding graduate audition recordings. I have had situations where the students have asked me, well, should I send in a selection from my recital, or from a noon recital that I did on campus, or should it be something that is specifically for the school that they are auditioning for?
Okay, hang on. I've muted Robin's mic again. Just so go. Whoever would like to take that.
I'm a little.
Personally,
sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it depends on to what extent they're following the instructions of the institution. I love a live recording, especially for considering professionals, because you can really see, I mean, in a live audition or a live performance situation, the student is probably nervous, and you can see where they are in dealing with nerves and handling all of the other elements that come into play in a live performance. If you have an option for more than one, a mix is always good, keeping it a diverse and broad selection. But I wouldn't, gosh, I don't know. It's the same as bringing in and going to a live audition. There are the instructions, and then there are always the exceptions when somebody comes in and doesn't follow the instructions and does a poor job. You blame them for not following the instructions, but when they come in and knock it out of the park, sure, we'll take that exception there. So it's, again, another situation. I find it to be like a live audition situation.
Amy, did you seem like you want?
Well, I totally agree with Brian about seeing them in performance. I love a live recording for that reason, because then you get a much better picture of what kind of performing artists they are. But I have two things to say. One is that, of course, I listen to graduate and postgraduate auditions and doctoral auditions and sort of every level from 17-year-olds up into their early 30s. When there are requirements, of course, you have to fulfill those requirements. So there's nothing wrong with putting something from your senior recital if it's good and if it fulfills a certain requirement. Most master's programs want to hear opera, but they want to hear recital repertoire as well. I think you don't want to leave out the opera, because that's still an important part of your master's experience, is getting some stage time. But I think someone who sings, for example, you know, Apparition of Debussy, that's a big sing. That's an aria-like song, and that can really talk about knocking it out of the park. If someone sings that beautifully, that's very impressive. The guideline, I think, is, you know, use your best instincts. Obviously, you're not going to submit only sort of beginner pieces for a master's program, but the bottom line is to put your best foot forward, and don't put anything on there that's not really, really good and shows you at your best.
Great. We've got questions coming in, so let me read some of these questions. The first one we've kind of addressed, but they've asked it a little different way. Will you consider audio-enhanced pre-screening clips somehow cheating? Will that give you a bad impression of the candidate? Matt, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I would say in general, don't. Don't play with it, because you can easily overdo it, and I guess it's kind of cheating. Luckily, trying to auto-tune a voice with a live piano in the room is pretty difficult, so you can't auto-tune your performance, luckily, yet. I'm sure they'll figure that out soon. But the reverb, that digital reverb sounds like digital reverb, especially on a classical singer. It's clear as day. And the thing that most people don't realize is that reverb effects actually add a little bit of treble frequency to the recording. Most of them do. And so when you start adding some of those effects on, you start changing the timbre of the voice by the effect. And so you're best off staying away from those things.
Well, I would say for a classical singer, you know, not to sing in a very dry room. Not a very live room either. You don't want to record in a very echoey church, but I have actually heard some very good recordings in churches. So it's either churches that aren't too reverberant, or the placement of the equipment is done well enough that you actually hear the voice with a little bit of natural reverb, which I think is okay. A little bit is okay. It also, singers, classical singers anyway, we don't use microphones, so we're not really generally not that comfortable using them, and we rely on the reverberation around us to, it's sort of, the room feels like the rest of our voice, rest of the instrument. So I think having a space that gives you a little bit is nice for the singer and also for the listener, but obviously not too much.
Kari, is this a time we can talk mic placement real quick for the live, since Amy brought it up?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
So I made a very scientific drawing here. So we'll say that but what we're trying to find is what's called the critical distance. And the critical distance is the place where you get a mix of the reverb of the room and the direct signal from the voice. So let's say this is your singer right here, and the direct signal of their voice is the straight line, and then this is the reverb signal. Okay? If you place the microphone closest to their voice, over this way, you're going to get a really dry and more of a harsh sound. Once you start backing up, if you go too far past the place where those points intersect, you're going to get nothing but room sound. So what you're trying to do is find that place where there's an equal balance between both the room and the direct signal of the voice, and a lot of times for singer, you want to go slightly in front of that. So the magic question is, how do you find that?
Exactly.
So the easiest thing to do is you're going to take an iPhone, if you have one, or you're going to take your recorder, and you're going to start a video recording, and you're going to hold it up in front of the singer's mouth and have them sing a sustained pitch. And as they sustain that pitch, you're going to walk backwards away from them. And you're going to keep going back until you realize you're at a point where the mix is awful. Then you go back and play the video, and you will listen to the voice change. And what's nice is you have the visual to see exactly where you are standing as the changes occur. And as you listen to that video, you're going to hear it really harsh and edgy in the beginning, and then it's going to get nicer and nicer and nicer. You're going to hit this sweet spot, and then it's going to get really boomy and echoey, like Amy just said, like you're in this massive cathedral. So then you find where that visual was of the place where the sweet spot was. You go back and set your camera up there and do another test, and 90% of the time you found easily the place where you have that perfect balance.
That's fabulous.
Matt, will you hold, somebody said they couldn't see it. Could you hold your little technologically advanced
Now, I will tell you, too, my intent was to have a demo video for everybody tonight, but because of Pava, that didn't happen. So, but I have the video recorded, and I was going to try to edit it and maybe put up the video on the NATS chat site.
That,
on the
that would
NATS
be
chat
great,
Facebook.
Matt.
And it shows you a demo of finding the critical distance and then how to also sync a separate audio recorder and a video recorder.
Oh, that would be just terrific. We will for sure post that on there. Let's ask another couple questions because they are coming in. So Kara has asked, would it be negative, would it be viewed negatively if somebody changed the height of the piano bar? For instance, if you need the piano bar at mid-height for classical song but full height for musical theater, is it all right to adjust? I don't know if I assume they're talking about in the middle of the recording. Of course, you could stop and start the recording. I'm not sure.
I think it's going to affect your recording. I think it's probably going to get overwhelmed. The piano is going to overwhelm the mix, would be my guess.
So keep it down, you're suggesting altogether.
Probably for the sake of recording.
Okay. Brian, it looked like you had a response.
I guess if they're separate tracks and the piano is partially in the picture, it's something I might, in my pre-screening, not even notice. But in an audition room, I would probably do a double take if the singer walked over to the piano and in between selections and changed it. I don't know. But yeah, it's not this. I do always like to see a bit of the piano in the audition if it's and sometimes I love seeing the whole pianist in the audition video, even as long as it's not sacrificing the image that I have of the singer or being too far away.
Right.
But I could see where. Well, it just depends. Gosh, it depends on the room.
Okay.
I've never seen anyone do that in a live audition. And I think unless it's being professionally recorded where the piano has its own miking system and the voices, they're really mic'd separately and someone is in the room controlling that. But then, of course, you're getting a very produced sound. It's like making a recording. I mean, like a CD or something. So, yeah, my own feeling about piano lids is that when you open them, I know a lot of big voice singers really want that lid open, Wagnerian singers, but for most singers, I feel it just cuts the clarity of the text. Mm-hmm. Even if the singer has a big enough voice to cut, you don't really get that crisp diction, and I think if you're using an iPhone, you're probably asking for trouble because I think you want much more clarity.
Great segue. Somebody asks, how do you feel about a pre-screen that has been recorded on an iPhone? Is that good enough quality? That's from Randy.
As long as it's a 6. And an iPhone 6 and up. Seriously, 6, the quality took a huge leap. And I did a recording one time with my expensive DSLR camera and my iPhone 6, and I ended up using the video from the 6.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
When I see the iPhone videos, I do prefer, well, depending on the room, I prefer when they're set up horizontally. But I would say that one of the things I notice is that, and this might be just how it translates to Decision Desk or Accepted. I don't recall this as much with Accepted, but I do think in every case it was probably the user error, not the software error. And that's that I click on the video and watch it, and it's sideways. So just as with your audio recordings or anything else in video recordings, make sure you check the upload and make sure that it got up there the way you wanted it to, because that's not what you want your panel doing at home when they're in their pajamas looking at your audition.
That's right. We use Get Accepted at Manus, and I have seen a few of those. I've also seen a few where they didn't trim it properly, and we've seen, them laughing, joking. Okay, let's do another take, and stuff we're not supposed to see.
Matt alluded to this earlier in terms of the trimming. If it is a selfie video, at least trim out the part that gives that away.
Yeah. Well, that leads. Somebody asked with regard to camera position, this is from Karen Reese, how much of the singer do you like to see? Head to toe, waist up, and should the camera zoom in and out or just stay stable?
I think stay stable. I think, mid or 3/4 is nice because you get to see enough of, how the person is, on stage. But if it's too far away, you're not going to see the face, which is really important.
I'd say exactly the same. I prefer it to stay stable. When possible, I like the full body shot, as I would have the opportunity to see in the audition. But if that means the camera has to be far enough away that I can't see your face, I'd prefer to see more of the face if I had to choose between the two.
Great.
I agree with both of them. What I often tell the students to do is do one of each. But with ours, they're doing a monologue too. So maybe do the monologue waist up, maybe do your songs, the full body shot, or do one full body 1/3/4, and they can mix it up because they have to do 3 selections for most musical theater schools. And that way we get a feeling for what is going on upper body and the whole picture as well.
That's a great idea, Matt.
Yeah. Kathleen Littlewise says, what equipment do you watch the videos on? On a laptop computer, professional sound system, or TV set? This is to address the quality of the recording. And I have to admit, like Brian, probably we're often sitting in our pajamas on our couch from our laptop watching. Maybe you all have a different experience.
Nope. We have, hundreds to listen to, and I guess we must have about 600 that are farmed out, divided up amongst the voice faculty. So we each wind up listening to about 150, perhaps maybe 200 with late auditions. So what I have started to do is I have started to plug in good headphones because I can listen to it just as we are now on my laptop, or even with my little iPhone. But my husband has some very powerful, good headphones, and I find that if I really take the time to listen with good headphones, I can hear qualities in the voice that I don't hear otherwise. But that's true of any recording. You never know what speakers people are listening to it on. So obviously you want it to be as good as possible, but
well, at least everybody's fair. Generally we all listen from the same location off the same equipment.
Yeah.
So at least nobody has an unfair advantage. It's all kind of nullified, I would say.
Yeah.
Lots of questions, so let me keep moving through these. So Iris Fisher has a couple questions wrapped into one. When you have a gifted student who is already singing more advanced rep appropriately and healthfully, why are they penalized or not permitted to sing this rep in auditions and competitions? She goes on to say, why are we typically limited to 24 Italian songs or other simplistic art song for undergrad? Why is oratorio or more complex material not permitted? That's not my experience, but maybe you guys have a different take on that.
It sounds like there have been specific competitions that had, repertoire for particular age groups. But I would just say if that's the case, I would just point you to Cecilia Bartoli's recordings of some of those aria antiche, and
right.
Just because they're not very rangy and therefore they're not very long, they're good for young singers. They're teaching pieces, doesn't mean they aren't beautiful pieces that you can make beautiful music out of if that's the requirement. But so Amarili by Bartoli to me is the end, the living end. So
Brian,
yeah, I haven't been on the other side of having such limited audition expectations, repertoire expectations. Mainly, the ones I've seen are pretty broad. Music theater, especially, it tends to be pretty broad. Contrasting up-tempo ballad, whatever it might be. It's usually intentionally broad. I did see a high school student who ended up at Ithaca College, sang Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera and roles that he an 18-year-old or 17-year-old I wouldn't buy, and then he was glorious and wonderful, and he was accepted.
It just occurred to me, and I didn't mean for this to be self-promotion, but as we're talking about this, it's a topic near to my heart. In fact, I have an article coming out in January, a featured article in the NATS Journal on this topic that lists in each Fach 10 age-appropriate arias that when you need to rise up and be, you're being compared against 600 other singers, you do have to sometimes sing something more advanced, but it still does need to be age appropriate. So anyway, please look for my article in January where I actually list 10 arias for each Bach that a high school teacher of voice might consider.
I would say, for me as well, like regardless of what the rep is, I am most impressed when it's flawless diction, flawless rhythms, flawless notes, perfect tuning, well committed as an actor or an actress, and fully confident in it's them as a human being. And when you take out the extreme high notes and tricky repertoire, you can shed away a lot of the things that could possibly limit you from showing us that. Because if a student at the high school age can get something that well prepared, that says so much. We all know that they're going to get high notes as they get older. I mean, they're 18 years old. They're going to get bigger and fuller voices and bigger and fuller high notes. But to see somebody who's taken that much time to really come up with a perfected performance of something really, I guess to me, shows how serious they are with it.
Yeah, I think it's up to the teachers to really make that judgment call about whether someone's ready to sing something or not. It used to be that you weren't even allowed to approach certain things unless you were already beginning your undergraduate work, and that has really changed. The bar has been lifted a lot. But so I think that's really up to the teacher to use his or her judgment about it. But I also think that singers should be careful that they're not picking their repertoire based on what would impress the panel, because I think that's really wrong-headed thinking. We're not going to be impressed because somebody puts, Regnava nel Silenzio down when they're 17 years old. As Matt said, we're going to be much more impressed with a really beautifully executed song from the 24 Italian songs that's really musical. The intonation is spot on. The vocal production is healthy. And there's a spark there. We can see potential. That's you don't have to be a finished project. You're not supposed to be. That's why you're applying to school.
That's great. Well, so let's move on to another. Gretchen has asked, you've all alluded to the fact that you don't need to be in a recording studio. If a student does submit a recording from a studio, is it ever held against that student?
I've not done that unless it was so. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. If I think of two examples. One case where it was obviously in a recording studio, and it was really well done, and I guess I should say this. It depends on how much it's amped up or not, how much editing there is. If there's a lot of editing to the extent that I don't feel I can really hear the voice, but what I am hearing is really excellent, I would give that student the benefit of the doubt. And that's just me, but that's mainly because that's really kind of the function of pre-screening for me is to, whenever possible, as much as possible, give the student the benefit of the doubt. So that's kind of my approach on that. And then other times it's in the studio and it's wonderful and glorious, and what you feel you're hearing and seeing is as if you were standing in the room or sitting there playing for them in that recording studio as well. So only if it's in the studio and edited and I'm still hearing out of tune singing and seeing vocal tension and all the other things, that's the only time that I would hold it against them. And that wouldn't matter if they're in the studio or not.
Okay. I completely agree with Brian, and I think most of us tend to give the singers the benefit of the doubt. The thing to remember, though, is that if you're sort of doctoring your recording just like you would, doctor a headshot, you might retouch. If you have a pimple, you might retouch that. But if you start changing too much the way you look, then you get the live audition, and then what? You're not what you've advertised to be, and then you're ultimately the loser in that situation. So there's no benefit in trying to make you should present yourself at your best, but there's no benefit to trying to make yourself appear better than you are or at a more advanced level than you are, because then what? Then you'll spend the money to fly to New York or San Francisco or Houston or wherever it is, and you won't be appropriate for that position. Rather than finding your true level where you actually belong, where you may, catch up spectacularly and 4 years from now be even better than the recording that you didn't make. you know, I think it's important to be seen at your best, but not to push it beyond that. So we're smart enough to be able to tell when somebody is trying to cover something up or exaggerate what the gifts that they have, and we still may give them the benefit of the doubt. Agreed, especially like the woman I was telling you about, the young woman who clearly was singing repertoire that was not appropriate for her, because I could see her and the sound was clearly overproduced, but there was enough musicality there. She actually was a beautiful singer, it's just not the right repertoire.
Great. Here's what, Matt, why don't you answer this one? When auditioning for a music theater program, this is from Kara Hancock, should people avoid patter, or can we use it if it shows acting ability?
Yeah, if it shows acting ability, that's fine. I mean, especially if the singer is somebody who's more of a character actor or a comedic performer, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I always think it's nice when you're trying to find contrasting pieces. You have the monologue to throw in there as well. And what we don't want to see is we don't want to see like 3 completely different sides of your personality, right? We want to see more of like who you are with little light shadings of that. So something of you being you, but slightly a funny version of you, or you and the lovey love ballad version of you. So we don't want to go to the extremes. But I've seen the patter stuff that can work really, really well. That just cannot become frenetic. It can't be them acting and gesturing every single word and articulating all over the place, or gesticulating all over the place. And so don't fall into that trap. I think that's the most important thing. And don't try to be funny. You should pick something that is just funny. But when people try, there's this monologue that is the worst monologue in the world of a guy talking about a second head on the back of his shoulder. And I saw 5 boys do this in one long audition day, and it never worked. And when we go to the Southeastern Theater Conference, we watch 250 people audition for us in 8 hours. And all of the things that are meant to be funny are almost never funny in that setting. So, tread lightly, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, you can pull it off, pull it off.
I find in music theater the contrasting part is the key. So if there's a patter song, I want to hear something else with legato that shows range. My preference is always to hear, depending on the singer, for music theater, to hear something in chest voice and something that's legit, or head voice. But I'm flexible on that. As long as they're both good, it renders further investigation to meet the student.
Great. We have some clothing attire questions, and I'm going to combine them. What do you like to see people wearing in the video? What should people avoid wearing? And then one specific question from Megan Law: what clothing attire do you expect from a pre-screening video for potential grad students?
I have strong opinions about attire. As sure you do, Kari.
I do.
If somebody's really gifted, I'm not going to hold it against them because they're wearing an evening gown, but you don't need to wear an evening gown. You don't need to be that formal. By the same token, what you think you look good in when you go out to a club with your friends is maybe not appropriate for the audition. I think you want to look classy. You want to look well put together. And I think you don't want a dress or suit or tie or whatever that distracts. You want it to flatter you, but you don't want you have something that is extremely low cut or have a wild pattern on it or something where you're going to pay more attention to the dress than to the singer. I think that's true for live auditions as well. You want something that makes you look terrific, but the focus is on you and not on your attire.
And shoes at any audition that is not a stiletto. I can't believe. I mean, I'm too old. We've had these conversations, or my favorite are the ones that walk up on stage and before they can do anything, they have to pull their skirts down. That's just never.
Well, really short skirts just don't look good. They don't look good even if you have the greatest legs in the world. Oh, hello.
I know, I'm sorry. Oliver wants to participate in the chat tonight.
Now, I do have some contrasting thoughts on music theater on that.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Because I think that they're different. So to me, we talk about their brand, right? And the students aren't going to know their brand at that point in time, but it's essentially like their archetype. Are they the ingenue, the girl next door, the bad girl, the comedic girl, or whatever? I think that they should pick something that fits their personality in real life. And so there's almost always a girl who's got her hair dyed a really funky color of red or purple, and she'll try to come in and wear a dress, and I would much prefer that she came in and wore jeans and a shirt and maybe boots that fit who she is, because that is really marketable and really interesting to us. Don't try to hide who you are because you think we want to see a certain kind of dress. Dress like you are, because we're casting you for roles that are age appropriate in the professional world, right? And most of those younger people are going to fit into those kind of younger archetypes. I don't like seeing boys in ties for musical theater because 99% of boys do not wear ties on a day-to-day basis. And if we're trying to find the realistic, natural version of them, we've already taken that away by, strangling them as they try to act and sing. And so they don't need to wear a suit, a sports coat. I'm really okay with them coming in jeans and a casual shirt if they need to. It should look reasonably good. And if they go and look up Broadway performers' headshots, I think that's a good starting place. If you go and look at a bunch of actors in New York City and see what they wore in their headshots, that's likely very similar to what they're going to wear when they go into the audition room, and that can give you some great ideas of what would be acceptable.
That's great information, Matt. Because I think opera is a little bit more formal, but you don't need to be in a gown or a tuxedo. You can also, I've had guys come in a nice shirt. I wouldn't say jeans are probably not okay for opera or classical situations.
I agree.
I often tell students, and for videos in particular, it's well, actually, I will say one thing about videos is you can actually control what you're wearing in terms of what the rest of the room looks like. So if you wear the black dress to the audition and you're up against a black curtain, you had not much control over that. But if you have a black curtain and you wear a black dress to your audition video, then something's a little bit off there. So just kind of pick your surroundings and create your scene, be your own costume and set designer when you make the videos. That would be my number one. But for live and recorded auditions, I say, you come as yourself, applying for the job or the role that you want. And in graduate programs, school programs, even young artist programs, in most cases we're looking to see where you fit into a pretty big picture. Whereas if it's pre-screening for a specific role or a specific production, then you might get more specific in what you're dressing up for. I think in opera and music theater to really show that you could inhabit that role. But for schools, gosh, it depends. Every school is different. The Northeast, to me, is formal. The New York schools, there's a formality there. There's a tradition. There's something there. And now I'm moving out west. I haven't seen a tie since I moved to Arizona. So I think it's just knowing your panel and knowing who's on the other end. Which I also wanted to add in there is just like the real auditions. You can easily ask your admissions directors who watches the videos, and if it's the voice faculty, you're not sure which voice faculty it might be, but you might be able to assess out whether it is a conductor or a coach or voice teachers, and just know who your audience is.
You bring up, Brian just mentioned something that's really interesting. I was having a lunch with two colleagues of mine, one from Cincinnati and one from University of Michigan, music theater programs. There are no voice faculties on those auditions. And so that's something really interesting to think about, is as voice teachers, a lot of times they're prepping the voice for this audition, and then the kid goes to the on-site audition and there's not even a voice faculty in the room. It's solely being judged by the head of the program, who's often an actor or a choreographer. So something to think about when we're on the music theater side about, showing off the extreme highs and lows of the voice versus just showing what you do really well and acting and communicating.
Mm-hmm. I think the gist of what both of you gentlemen have said is that you want to find out who you are. So, obviously in musical theater things are more relaxed, and you can wear jeans or wear other outfits or whatever, but you want to be yourself. And I'd say that's the case, vocally. That's the case in your dress as well. It might be a little bit more formal, as you say, in New York, but it doesn't mean that somebody who comes in without a tie is going to be rejected if he's got talent and does a wonderful audition.
Well, we're coming to the end of our hour, and some wonderful questions that we're going to have to leave on the table, but I think this one, it will help us wrap it up. What kinds of things make videos stand out from a group of pre-screenings?
I'd say personality. When I have a sense, even, I like, some schools specifically instruct you to do this or not, but when you have the option, just as in a real audition, if you have the opportunity to introduce yourself, and really succinct, get to the singing as fast as possible, but unless it's specifically asked that you don't introduce your selections on the videos, take the opportunity to show us who you are before you sing, as you would have the chance in the audition room, as long as you're very succinct with it. Because we've already waited a minute for the video to upload into our browser. But I think personality, and that's really what makes them stand out, because I think first of all, it's hard to show your personality in an audition when you're 17 years old and auditioning for things maybe for the very first time. And you go to school and you train for years, and then you audition for years to figure out how to show who you are in the room. So if you can get your personality to come through in that audition video, that is definitely one thing that sets you aside from all of the other short little clips.
That's wonderful. I agree with the succinct part as well, because you don't need to say, I'm going to sing Despina's aria from Così fan tutte by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. We know who wrote it. Just be quick about it and be confident and joyful, and then just be yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think they hit it spot on the head. I think it's all those things. Now, I don't know, perhaps Amy and Brian could do this as well. I'd be willing to, if there are other questions that would be worth answering, if you want to post them on the NATS chat Facebook, maybe we could answer them there.
Well, and we've got just a couple minutes, and that some of it has to do with like tattoos and nose rings for especially classical auditions. Do you need to take those out or cover up your tattoos? Does it matter? Just a quick yes or no.
Don't we just have 30 seconds?
Oh my God.
No, that's a different can of worms, but I'm happy to give my take on it if we have time.
Go ahead, Brian.
Brian, go ahead.
I say, it's finding that balance between what I said earlier of showing us who you are and showing us what job you want. And I think you answer the same questions as you would if you were going into a job interview, and knowing who you're interviewing for and what job it is that you want. It's case by case. There are situations when that will get you the part. There are situations when that would specifically not get you to the part, and I think you just have to know. Those are the sorts of questions we ask ourselves as artists every day, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we have pop rock is a huge part of our curriculum at Shenandoah, so if you got piercings and tattoos, come on down. But just remember, what's really cool right now may not be cool in 10 years. So, you're making a branding commitment at 18 if you get too carried away.
And something like blue hair, if you're auditioning for a pedagogy degree program. Great for musical theater. Do we care if you're auditioning for a pedagogy program?
I'm very liberal.
I can't speak to that. I'm not a fan of the piercings and the tattoos. That's a personal prejudice. And but if someone came in with a nose ring and blue hair and they, just blew us away with, with their singing, I would, to me, that ultimately is what we're there to we're there to listen and find talent. But it would be tough.
I mean, to me, going on what Brian had said is you're dressing for what you're going in for. And if you're going into graduate school for pedagogy, you probably are aiming towards having a job in the academy at some point in time. And we're not quite there yet with the blue hair and piercings and tattoos. So yeah, you may want to tame that down a little bit for grad school.
I'm going to slip in this last one because I think it's a really good one. In the case of submitting an audition video after completing this pre-screening round, what percentage of students are actually accepted into the programs without a live audition? So in other words, do you accept people into your program that submit by video?
We do at Manus. It's a relatively new thing, but then they have to really follow the admissions requirements. So it's not just a pre-screening, but it's got to be everything they would actually present at a full audition. And we have to listen, and we listen to exactly what we would listen to at a live audition. It's a more extensive.
But it is possible. Somebody could get into the program.
Yeah. I think for most music theater programs, no. I don't know of many of my colleagues who have. I think in a rare case where they've needed, a 6'4" male who can dance and they're out of all their auditions and a video comes through, they might do that. But in general, I think we want to see their personality in the room, watch them dance, and take acting adjustments, and you can only do that in person.
Brian?
I know of just one case. We at Ithaca, we did have people that were able to petition for if in the case of affordability they couldn't make it to a live audition, or generally that was the one main reason that we would allow. And then everything we've talked about just became much more important. It really had to be quality video. I really had to believe that what I was hearing on that video is what I would hear in person. And there were, say, maybe a dozen cases over a few years that people had submitted that as their main audition, and there was only one instance when I was willing to take the gamble and say, okay, accept them. Just everything was so brilliant and wonderful about it that I trust that this is going to be the student that shows up. And unfortunately, that case, that the student was what was seen on the video. But it is a big, just realize it's a larger risk that the university is taking by doing that only by video.
Right.
I would also say just quickly that somebody would have to be, I think you have to be that much better to be accepted by video only. You have to be so sure that this person is terrific. Because if there's any question, it could be a very uncomfortable situation for everybody.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. What an incredible chat tonight, and we really did power through a lot of questions there in the last 4 minutes that we ran over, so thank you. I can't thank the panel enough, and also pleased to invite everybody for November 8th, Sherry Sanders, Rock the Audition, so that should be a great evening as well. For those of you who have ever seen her in masterclass or in demonstration, it's always exciting. But Matt, Brian, Amy, thank you for your expertise tonight.
With a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great information. Matt, continued safe travels home.
Thank you.
And David, thank you for at the last minute stepping in to make sure everything runs well tonight.
You're very welcome.
We're getting lots of thank yous, so thank you. The panel will stay on for just a minute, and David is going to turn off our attendees. And good night. We'll see all you attendees in a month.
Right.
Lots of appreciation coming in.
It'll take me a while to dismiss attendees as they depopulate.
They can turn off themselves as well.
Yeah, they should. Everybody turn yourself off.
Turn yourself off.
There they go. They're all going.
There. We just have a few.
Any stragglers, I will depopulate them myself. But
Okay. Hang on just a second, guys.
I'm going to stop the recording now, yes?
Yes, please.